right, hey there, everybody. We're talking together from the humble world headquarters of our New Legend 4x4 shop. Welcome to the New Legend podcast, where we will explore vintage vehicles, adventure, family, culture, and being a man in the 21st century. And this is a podcast for people that do stuff. I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Luke Stevenson.
Hello, that's me.
Yes, this is a great guy, critical thinker, someone in my life who challenges me. And as a younger guy, I consider as a mentor. And he specifically is our product and product development engineer here. And he's played a really key role in the growth and success of our company. So Luke, what do you think about multi-generational mentorship?
Oh, we're jumping into it. Yeah, good.
Do you have that in your life, you feel?
Oh yeah, I mean, benefit of older mentors is they're at or have been where you're going.
That's right. But typically, I think when we think of mentorship, I totally agree. And it's a super wise thing to have older mentors in your life. But I think when we think about mentorship, we often only think about people who are older than us or ahead of us in a season of life. What do you think about younger? Can a younger person be a mentor?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, in the past, I would have said no because you're 12 years old and it's hard to look up to a 6-year-old. Oh yeah,
Luke, let me tell you what, man.
You got cool toys. How did you do that?
That's right.
No, but it's yeah, I think there's definitely benefit there.
Yeah, because I think there's just culture shifts, and the way people think is different. And just, I know, like my kids, I consider them as definitely mentors in a certain way. I don't necessarily buy off on like the wisdom of let the children lead us, because most kids are kind of idiots. Like just like we were when we were kids. But as far as culture, technology, like my kids teach me so much about just what's happening in the world and kind of how young people are thinking and what's coming down the pike.
Picking up on the hip lingo from them?
I try to teach them some good lingo as well. Well, this is episode 1 for us, so we'll be certainly available and just audio only, but also on video. So this will be available on YouTube and other such channels, so you can watch and listen. Why you would watch, I don't know, other than we are in a super cool shop with cool vehicles, so you got to check that out. So I've been thinking a lot lately about why we do what we do and what we do, and why we wanted to do this show. I know it's kind of the hip thing to do a podcast nowadays, but we just have such rich conversations around the shop and on trips, and we thought like, wow, this could be something cool that other people might want to chime into. And one of the driving thoughts has been like just thinking through the rich things in life are really, when it comes down to about people and relationships that are lived out in our families, communities, cities, and more largely in our country. Think about like the global, like the American overlanding community, or just vintage trucks or vintage cars. Like that's a pretty cool thing to be able to go to any show, to go to like the Overland Expo shows, and like you have kind of this insta friends and people you can relate to and talk to. And adventures and the tools of adventure create a context for people to come together and build lasting relationships. And these really just are shaping kind of context. And so one thing we talk about a lot is how classic 4x4s in a unique way are carriers of memories and really of legacy. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you create this instant community kind of out of strangers, just through a common bond and passion for something.
Yeah, and it's not unlike people who love bowling or anything else.
I'm just no good at bowling, so
that's right. That's right.
Drive trucks.
But what do you think about the idea that is it unique to like older vehicles or vintage? In our case, vintage SUVs, like vintage kind of 4x4s that are just carriers of such strong memories. Like, do you think this generation is going to attach the same kind of nostalgia and memories to like, we used to rip around in this Toyota Sienna. That thing was just so great. Had cup holders everywhere and USB ports.
I think you'll have memories. It's not going to be about the vehicle though at that point.
Yeah,
or it's not going to be centered around. It's
yeah.
mostly going to depend on who you're with, where you're going.
I think you're right. So I'm sure as kids, like we didn't go, oh, this Jeep Wagoneer is so sweet. We'd be like, oh, this thing's bumpy and this thing is whatever.
I mean, we had an old Dodge Caravan. I remember cruising around in that, and the one thing I distinctly remember is when we'd pull out, and us kids were all late, and my dad's like trying to go, and we'd pull out, and the door's still open, and we'd be driving down the road, the sliding door's still partially open, and you just hit the brakes, and it'd come flying close.
And take someone's hand off.
Yeah.
What year was that?
That was an 87 Dodge Caravan.
So, we had like an 84, and think about this. It was an 84, I think it was a Caravan, but it was a manual transmission.
Really? In a van?
Yeah, in a van. It was pretty crazy.
That's sweet.
And I remember one time we were driving, this was the demise of it. Like we were driving and it just like the transmission must have just like exploded and it just completely locked up one front tire and just we skidded to a halt. But a manual transmission minivan, like I'm pretty positive
pretty unheard of now.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's something that we talk a lot about. Like we kind of say like a vintage 4x4, particularly in today's culture, makes like mundane things memorable.
Yeah, so the difference there is when you go to stop and get gas, people aren't coming over and being like, "Oh, sweet 87 Caravan, that's got the wood grain side."
They might now.
Well, yeah.
Like those things are probably coming
in the day, though.
In the day. Yeah, I think that community aspect of owning and driving a vintage. It could be a muscle car, but again, in our case, a vintage 4x4. It's like it's an instant memorable thing because everyone wants to talk to you like, oh man, my grandfather had one of those or my parents had one of those. Or it's pretty amazing the amount of social interaction you have when you're driving a cool old truck.
I was just thinking if an 87 Caravan, like a mint 87 Caravan was at a gas station.
Oh, for sure.
I would talk to them now.
For sure. Or like a mint 89 Ford Probe GT.
Oh, yeah.
White 5-speed turbo.
Highly specific.
Highly specific. Yeah, that 80 stuff, man, is really coming around, you know? The OJ Broncos.
And that's getting to the point where it's, you know, that next generation doesn't really
true.
know about it. And so the kind of the old timers now are looking back and going, oh,
and it's interesting, man. Like, I don't know, just car design. I feel like we got like super vanilla for a while. Like in the 80s were kind of a lot of cool stuff.
It went through a real econo-box phase there.
Yeah, but still, there was still some innovation and weird stuff, like the dash design, like just got really kind of so unique that I think it's memorable and cool.
I wonder if we'll see those electronic sliding seat belts that whoosh and come up when you shut the door.
Dude, the Ford Probe has those.
Yeah. No, but I mean, if we'll see them again, like if that was, like, they'll go back and be like, that was good technology. Let's try that again.
That was just like made people not buckle up because they give it the false sense of security. Yeah. So it's just like the shoulder portion, not the lap belt. So I'm sure there's some bad data, like bad accident data about like people getting wrecked because they had just this shoulder harness on, no lap belt. Just like, bust your shoulder. So yeah, like that's interesting. In the 90s though, stuff just kind of got. What's really memorable from the 90s? I mean, there's always like the Camaros or the
I feel like
Fox body Mustangs.
I mean, to me, some of the import stuff was like the RX-7s and that kind of thing.
Yeah,
those are kind of cool, but
think of
it's a different genre.
Minivan, like because like when I was growing up, we had these sweet like large station wagons. They were just so cool, like in odd in their own way, like a rear-facing third row seat. It's like that kid is.
Yeah, those were cool.
I remember being in high school and just being like flipped off by little kids sitting in that back. You just stare at them too much, or like following a school bus.
Yeah, cool kids in the back always making fun of you.
Yeah, I think like the 90s though is the renaissance of the minivan.
Yeah, that was our next vehicle, was a 96 Dodge Caravan upgrade. But yeah, lost
some flavor.
Got no feelings for that one.
Got no feelings. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the podcast. So this is kind of crazy. This is a show about a show. So we're going to have, I think of I don't know if he coined it, but I heard him talking about it. Like Foster Huntington was talking about interesting people doing interesting things in interesting places, something like that. And that I don't know, I'm sure if it's not in that order. So one of the things I'm really excited to do is expand this conversation with guests. And you and I have talked about some of those guests, and just think about all the trips we've taken, even just our customers, how many cool people we get to meet.
Yeah, and just everybody has such unique life experiences, and owning a company or providing this or doing this, and so it'll be fun to,
yeah. And I think around that we're going to have some shows that center around just individuals that have built up brands. So like building a brand is something that is fascinating to me as an entrepreneur. Just people that have started from nothing and started these cool companies around crazy ideas. I remember when I was getting ready to purchase anything Scout. So this is like probably in 2001. Someone gave me the advice of like, hey, go to the local small SBA, the local Small Business Administration, and just like talk to there's like this, I think it was called SCORE. It was like with these retired executive volunteers that, man, thankful for that opportunity. They would volunteer their time to just talk to young entrepreneurs about their business plans. But I remember presenting this business plan like, hey, I'm going to buy this company that specializes in international scouts, and we're going to sell parts, and we're going to restore them and build them. And
how'd that go over?
Not good. They looked at me and they go like, this is a bad idea. Like, stay away from it. This business has no validity. And I'm a little bit like, I tend to kick against the grain. So for me,
you guys don't know what you're talking about.
And maybe they were smart and they just knew like this would motivate this guy. I don't think that was their theory, but to me it was like, oh yeah, like no, I believe it. And so I went ahead with I just said, forget you. I'll figure out a different way to do it. So rather than at the time taking out an SBA loan, I just took an equity line against my house, and we were fortunate that we had some equity in our house. And so leveraged everything, bought the business, and that was, I don't know, 2003, so 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're growing stronger than ever. And so that is interesting. Okay, so interesting guests. Like, we got a great lineup of guests that are going to talk about building a brand. Just people that love automobiles and like have all kinds of different interests. That's one of my favorite things, is just
finding people that are passionate about something.
Yeah, that's right.
It's
that's
always
exactly
enjoyable.
Right. I think that's the key, because it's not just passionate about cars per se or vintage 4x4s, but just people that get stoked on diving into researching things or just different kind of quirky things. And so those people are fascinating. So we're going to have a lot of guests like that. And it'll be, we hope, a couple times a month. We're hoping to just be a weekly podcast and have guests hopefully twice a month. Luke and I will anchor it. We'll have some of our other local friends and things in on the conversation as well. We're going to talk about some technical things. So again, focusing on vintage 4x4s. We take a lot of road trips as a group and individually. Like, I just got back from a epic 30-hour there and back trip from Ames, Iowa to Indianapolis, and I listened to
30 hours.
Well, it was like I had to work for a bunch of it, but it's essentially it took me like
16 hours of driving.
It took me like 10 hours to get there, which is super slow. But I was trailering in the base camp bourbon.
Oh yeah,
and it was raining. It was just like kind of a slow drive. But on that, I typically listen to podcasts. That's how I stay awake and stay engaged with the living when I'm driving those long trips. And so many times when I've searched like vintage 4x4s or I've just not been super impressed with the content available in this world of kind of adventure, vintage 4x4s,
adventure travel. Yeah,
like overlanding, and there's some good podcasts out there. but I just thought there's room for more. And so we're going to dig into some tech, particularly around like not so much like how do you rebuild a carburetor on a 1962 Jeep Wagoneer, but more like tech around
gear, equipment, planning,
gear and equipment, or like systems on how to pack. I'm fascinated by that. The range, like some people approach overlanding and trip preparation in a minimalist way and say like kind of less is more, and just not overloading the vehicle. Some people go nuts and just like ultimately gear out and geek out on all the latest gadgets and everything. And you kind of see that reflected in that, in their rigs, you know?
Yeah, and so that's not to say that one way is necessarily better.
Not at
just
all.
A broad spectrum of
And everyone's
potential.
got kind of an opinion about it. We tend to embody, I think we kind of default to like an OEM. Like there's something about factory designed things. They're not always perfect, but they just they have to build them to last. And they build them around a set of parameters that are integrated in the design. And so, but anyway, taking that philosophy and just thinking through like when is too much, how much is too little. And we certainly have our own experience and things like that, but equipment and gear, there's some awesome like innovation that goes into equipment. Think of like the 12-volt refrigerator, like the portable fridge.
Right, yeah.
That's transformative, man.
Some little components can really change the trip.
And so that'll be fun. We're going to talk a lot about that. What is one of your favorite pieces of gear in traveling by vehicle?
Oh, man.
Pencil, flashlight.
Pencil, flashlight.
The other one's little.
That's true. Those are nice. Little pen lights.
Yeah, pen light.
You don't realize how often you would use it if you had it. No, and we talked about this a little before, but I think I have this tiny little cool. So first of all, in the back of my Scout, I have this drawer system that pulls out.
Okay.
Super handy for storing things, drawers, multi-level marketing.
So you're a drawer guy, because I was talking to someone just like last night, and he's like, I'm not so big on
the drawers?
On drawers, like more like just Rubbermaid bins.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm kind of a drawer guy too, but I don't have a great drawer system.
If it's just like a little bit of height, so you're not losing a bunch of stuff, and then you can pull it out.
That's right.
I'd fill the whole back with drawers, man.
Yeah.
But anyways, within that drawer system, I found this little cooler that is the exact same height and length and just fits right in there.
Yeah.
And so...
And you get some additional insulation from it being
that's right.
a box.
But road snacks are my favorite thing. And so having a cooler for those road snacks is a necessity.
But how do you feel about a cooler center console?
I'm for it.
You are.
The trouble is I'm driving a manual with a bench seat right now.
That's right. Not great.
Well, there's some innovation to be had.
What do you think about those bench seats in some of the old trucks that are like, it's a bench seat, but it has like a flip up, like Wagoneers and the old like Travelogues had it, like where it's like a middle bench seat console combo.
Yeah. That's genius.
Yeah, some guy was stoked. Some engineer was like, "Oh, check this out."
Yeah, I don't really know why I have a bench seat. You're always taking corners and just you end up in the passenger seat by the time you're done turning.
Yeah, especially in a Scout, I guess. But I mean, have you had 3 people in the front?
We've stacked it pretty deep there.
Yeah, that's kind of nice. But that's an old school thing. Bench seat. I don't think any cars come with bench seats anymore.
Cars?
Yeah.
Probably not. No.
Or trucks or anything.
Yeah, probably not.
Even a pickup truck. I'm curious if you can get a brand new pickup truck with a bench seat.
No, I don't think so. Big elaborate center consoles that are definitely
but that'll kill like half the country songs.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, we're also going to talk about just learning. Like we are people and we are a shop that is constantly learning and evolving. Partially why we want to talk to guests, because we learn a lot of things from people. Yeah. I was just in Indianapolis with Steve Sanders from Cummins and Brittany and Kevin from Axis Industries, and man, those just some smart people within their fields.
And a completely different knowledge base that they've spent their lives.
Yeah, digging into like mastery of a few things, and it's cool to be around people like that because you just soak it up and learn. And so another thing we want to talk about is being doers. I'm fascinated with the concept of being someone that does stuff. Like there's a lot of people that talk. That's like, I think the whole internet troll, like internet thing, like so many people love to talk about stuff and act like they're experts.
Yeah.
But we want to be people that talk about stuff, make wise, informed decisions, but also that just do stuff.
Words without action doesn't mean a whole lot.
That's right. And so anywhere from like adventure to, because it's hard, like as car people like us, which I'm sure a lot of people that are going to listen are going to relate to, like, oh yeah, man, they're just like enthusiasts about a lot of things, and they like vintage SUVs, but they also like a lot of things. And we certainly love to talk about the things that we're passionate about and interested in. Mm-hmm. But converting that into becoming a doer is the challenge for mankind, in my opinion.
And I think that, so for me, I like a little bit of everything, which is tough. Because I feel like for somebody with a distinct, direct passion, a passion is a catalyst into action. But when I have a little bit of passion for so many things, it's tough to know what to do. So that's why I'm really going to enjoy getting these people who have a focus, have their goals, and are going after it. Because I think that'll, just for me, it'll motivate me to get going.
Yeah, me too, man. I say this often, but that's one of the things about myself that I don't like. But it's just, I don't think you can change who you are in that sense. Like the jack of all trades, master of none. Like that. It's cool. I think of like sports. Like I've never really excelled, been awesome at one thing, but I'm like decent at a lot of things, which makes you, like, I guess, fun to be around because like you can relate to a lot of different people and things. But yeah, I have a ton of respect, and we're definitely going to have some guests that have like honed in on a skill and like have this disciplined approach to.
So I'd be curious to see if that's just who they are, or if they went, no, I just decided to disregard everything else and go after this.
And it's probably somewhat for a season in life.
Yeah.
Because I would think it's, what you're talking about is good. It's probably more rare to have a lifelong, like, furniture maker or something like that. That is their lifelong passion. Not woodworking, like one aspect of woodworking, or metal fabrication, one aspect. Yeah.
We'll see.
That'll be fun to explore. Another thing that I think is really cool thing to talk about is like those people that are doers, but that are also catalytic in getting others involved. That's something I really think is important, and I'm fascinated by. So catalyst kind of people that inspire others to action. I'm excited to talk to some cool people like that. Another thing we're going to talk about is just kind of segments in the podcast. That's how we'll break it up. Not really something we're going to talk about, but we will talk about at times things we're learning in different vocabulary.
Yeah. Vernacular.
Yes. So we'll bring that up from time to time.
Of the day. Get some hip lingo from your kids, and we'll discuss we think it means.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. That would actually be really fun. Yeah, I'll have to ask them about that. My kids are basically 13, 17, 19, and 21. So span a little bit of a range there, but definitely like they're tuned into culture.
Maybe a phone-in guest.
Yeah,
has he got on the phone?
Yeah, that'd be funny. And they're kind of all moving all around now and stuff like that. So one of the segments is going to be, we're going to ask all of our guests, what was your first car? What are you driving now? What is the future of driving? So let's maybe dig into the first two, because the future of driving, we'll have tons of time to talk about that. That is a topic that gets us kind of fired up.
Getting exciting here. Things are moving.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Well, I don't know. Exciting in a good way or bad way.
As far as like automotive technology?
Yeah, it's just changing, man. I feel like quicker than it has in the past. Or
yes.
Bigger.
Because largely
substantial changes.
For the last, since the infrastructure of the highway system, things have roughly been the same. Like you grew up when you were 16, probably very similar to how I grew up. I'm 15 years older than you. When I grew up.
I feel like significant changes, like safety changes for me, was like kids need to be in a car seat now, and like it's the law to wear your seatbelt.
But that's not paradigmatically shifting. That's
pretty
right.
Pretty
just some
minor.
innovation.
Like, yeah, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
As opposed to like we were just crawling all over. I mean, when we're
I think when I was a kid,
car.
so I was in high school in the late 80s, and the innovation was. It's so weird to me because I had a 71 Buick Skylark in high school. It's like a muscle car. I put this Chevy 350 in it. I was pretty proud of that thing. But I bought it for $35.
So cheap.
So cheap, ridiculous. And gas was pretty inexpensive at the time. But what's weird to me now is like that car was like 17, 18 years old when I was in high school. And like and your 87 Dodge Caravan is like way older than that now.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, the innovation was like kind of like the Japanese small econo cars, like were really starting to take over and not take over, but gain market influence. But yeah, nothing really changed. Like, and it's probably been like that for 50 years. And now, like you said, like this stuff is exponentially, radically shifting as far as a paradigm.
Yeah.
Autonomous cars, electric cars. So the question is, what is the future of driving? Big conversation.
Both what do you want it to be and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, that's actually a good point because I think a lot of people would say where they want it to be is where it was. I don't want it to change.
Yeah.
But I mean, innovation is the same thing. Like think about, because this is probably a switch in my lifetime, was the switch from carburetors to fuel injection. Like think of that. Like,
well, and there's still like a group of people that are hanging and going, no, EMPs, you're gonna be stranded.
That's
like,
right.
Carburetors are the way to go. So
but think about you have like you just got like this Toyota Tercel wagon. What year is that?
87 Tercel wagon.
And what is one of the biggest problems with it?
There's like 100 emissions hoses going all over the place,
Yeah.
little diaphragms.
And it's
carbureted.
Yeah, so it's tough. Yeah, it's tough to get that thing dialed in. So that's shifted. Like one thing I talk about with a lot of people is why it's tough to own because a big base of our business is putting modern drivetrains into vintage vehicles. It's kind of, I think in like 2013, we kind of made this big shift in our business that alienated a lot of customers from us because we said, you know what, we want to bring the Scout, particularly at the time it was the International Scout. We want to bring the International Scout to a new generation of people. And that new generation of people either does not have the time nor interest nor skill to adjust carburetors, to change points, to do all these things that are kind of normal in owning an old original vehicle. So we started doing modern engine swaps. And one of the reasons is not just skill, but it's the infrastructure. Like when I was a kid, you had corner gas stations, like service stations that were like the gas station, service station. They always had 2 or 3 mechanics on.
And they knew how to tune that stuff, how to work on it.
Yeah, so you could drop it in. Now, you buy a 1970 Land Cruiser that has an original engine, and like good luck finding you could take it to 10 shops and get rejected by 10 shops and go like, no, we don't have time. We make more money doing a brake job on a 2010 Toyota Camry than messing. So the infrastructure doesn't exist to deal with the maintenance that is required on an old vehicle. It doesn't mean they shouldn't be owned. Like both of us have stuff that's old and original and carbureted, and it's super fun to drive.
I get it. There is a simplicity to it.
Yeah, it's great.
But it's just a different knowledge base and a different kind of expectation.
So we're going to talk a lot about that, the future of driving. Man, it's changing quickly. And so that'll be a fun conversation. So before we do that, Luke, what was your first car? And I'll nuance that a little bit, saying your first car, but your first car of note.
Of note. I would say It was a 91 Ford Crown Victoria Country Squire.
Oh, yeah.
Station wagon.
So good. With that velour interior.
Oh, man. It was so
Also a bench
sweet.
seat?
Bench seat, front and rear. It didn't. So those were an option to come with a rear flip-up reverse-facing seat.
Yeah.
Ours didn't have that.
Okay.
It was like little like trap doors in the back that would flip up. And so it wasn't actually reverse-facing. There were two like side-facing seats.
That's right. But you didn't have that option.
I didn't have that one. I spent a while looking at like junkyards.
What year was it
trying to find
again?
that. 91.
So that had the like a 5.0? Like,
Yeah, it was a
like
5.0.
A good engine,
Just
man.
drinking gas.
Yeah, it was such a good engine. 'Cause 91 is like definitely like fuel injection. Like that's a good HO engine.
It was theoretically powerful, but that thing was so big and heavy. It was so smooth though. You hit a bump and then you're still feeling it like 20 seconds later. Just
so
cruising
rad.
down the road.
Great vehicle. Actually,
man.
when I met you, I think that's what you were driving.
Yeah,
And then I remember when you sold it, seeing it around town. I was like, oh, someone's so lucky.
just wood paneling on the side.
Now, we should caveat this with we are in Iowa, and vehicles in Iowa just get destroyed by salt and rust.
It was getting pretty bad by the time I sold it.
Because
It was so much fun in the winter because it was just a big, heavy driftmobile, rear-wheel drive. It was so slow you couldn't get enough speed to do anything dangerous.
But that's a cool first car, man. That's that's cool.
It was fun. I think the most people we ever had in it was 9.
And then what was your next vehicle?
So then I went to a 98 4Runner, 3rd-gen 4Runner, factory rear E-locker.
And that was like
sweet.
your purchase, like your.
That was the first vehicle I like truly all in purchase, like a nice vehicle that I.
And you're like
purchased.
you're a guy that does research, so you did your research.
Yeah, so those are just crazy reliable vehicles. The rear E-locker was something I was
That's
like
nice.
just starting to hang around at the shop and kind of work here, and I was like, dude, off-roading's fun. I want to go just mess around. So
Do you remember that time? Like it was again like when we were first kind of getting to know each other. You called me and you were stuck. Was that in the 4Runner?
yeah,
It was.
yeah, it was like a kind of a spring day here, but it snowed one day. And so I went out on some B-level roads, and the snow covers up a lot of obstacles.
And in Iowa, just for some context, there's surprisingly a large amount of gravel road still in Iowa. It's like you have like major paved roads, but there's still a lot of they're like these straight gravel roads. And then off of those gravel roads, there are these B-level roads, right, that are
Just
usually
dirt
access roads.
Yeah.
So they're unmaintained dirt roads.
Just kind of between fields. And so me and some buddies went out and we're like, oh, let's go mess around. It's going to be sweet. And then we instantly got stuck. We're driving through, because all you see is snow, and you're just like, yeah, let's go speed through that. And then we just sank to the point where the passenger, like we couldn't really open the doors because we were just so stuck. And so then that was on a Friday or something.
Yeah.
And we tried to get out for a while, and there's not really any trees to like winch along to or anything. And so like the rest of us had stuff to do, so we just got a ride home.
Yeah, and
we're like,
left it there.
Tomorrow Saturday I'll come get
funny.
it then. And that's when I called you up asking if I could get some help.
Yeah, and I don't know why. Like, I've just bought this like '91 Chevy 1500 like shop truck, basically. So I don't know why I didn't bring one of my Scouts. Maybe I just didn't want to get them super muddy.
But so it had warmed up, so all the snow was melted at
Yeah.
that point, so it was even muddier.
And what was great about like the shop truck was I didn't care about it, so it was just full 100% full throttle, just romp through the mud, and we eventually got it out, but that was fun.
Lots of digging.
Yeah, I always love that guy, and I've had the people like that where it's like, help, like call him up, like it's 10 at night, and you're like, oh, dude, I'm stuck.
on, man.
Like, come on. So cool. My first car. It's hard for me to remember because like I've had a ton of fortune to have cool. My parents were super cool, and so like for example, by the time I was 16, I had probably 6 or 7 68 to 72 C10 Chevy pickups.
You had or
I had
at one point?
I had
at
it
one time.
At one time, I probably had at least 5.
Jeez.
I grew up in Connecticut. It was kind of a rural area, but we still got like letters from the city. But my parents were just...
Your parents were just like, yeah, just go park them over
they
there.
were
Like,
cool,
don't.
man. I'm so grateful for that. Like, and in front of my house, we just had like 1,000 burnouts. Like, it was just kind of fun. Free place to grow up. But yeah, so I had all this C10 Chevy pickups, and I would buy them and sell them, which is interesting. But a young entrepreneur, like I didn't realize it at the time, but I just didn't have any money, and so I bought my first one for like $200, and then I would take some good parts off that, or fix it, sell it for $800, and then and some of them are sweet, man, sweet finds, like a big block, like $396. Get it for $100. Like it was just it was the golden era of finding trucks, and they were nice, and not all of them were rusty. But anyway, the funny thing was I never got one running that was mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I kept this one that
Just had 'em
it was a
scavenge parts
70.
and
It was
sold?
yeah, it was a 1969 C10 fleet side short bed 2-wheel drive pickup, super cool. Had like a straight 6 in it when I got it. I put a 396 in it that I kind of got these heads and like a cam and built it all up, turbo 400. And it was almost ready to run, but I just couldn't afford to buy a drive shaft. Like to get a drive shaft custom made, I didn't know where to go to get one because there was no internet.
Right.
And so I would just sit there. I would go out, because I was only 15. I'd go out and just rev it, like start it and rev the mess out of it. And I'd do that like every day. And eventually, I think I blew the motor. Like it just started smoking real bad, and something happened to it. And then I took it apart. I'm like, okay, I'll fully restore this thing. And I took it apart and never put it back together.
Classic.
So then, but I think I had a '69 Blazer.
So what was your first vehicle that you drove around?
I can't remember if it was this Blazer. So my grandparents bought a '69 Chevy Blazer, Hugger Orange, CST version, custom sport truck. It was awesome. And my dad passed away like 8 years, I don't know, a little while ago. And I'm still kind of bitter at him for giving my brother this Blazer first. I had an older brother. So it had like low mileage, beautiful original truck. And when my brother turned 16, my dad let my brother have it. And in 1 year, it was primer black, had like 35-inch tires on it, no lift. It just was roached out, like so it made me mad. So then I think I drove that for.
Would you have done the same thing though at that point in your life?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like we were kids and they were a dime a dozen. We had no sense of value of this,
Right.
let alone like the historical connection to my family that my grandparents bought it brand new in California. Yeah, that's the other thing. We went out as a family to California and drove it back across country.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was so rad. So that's I'm still a little bitter about that. But we had some great memories in that thing. So, but I don't know how long. I didn't drive it very long. And then we sold it for like $1,500, which is decent, but for back then. But I had this '87 Pontiac Sunbird. I don't know if you've ever seen. They're not very. It almost looks like a Vega, like it's that kind of car. But it was rear wheel drive and it was a 4-speed, and it had like this 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. But it was super fun because you could just do lots of burnouts in it, and it was a fun car. So yeah, and I just had tons of cars. In Connecticut, they had this program where you could get temporary, because they had emissions testing and like the safety inspection in the state of Connecticut. I don't know if it's still the same, but so for $30, it was like $20, you could get a 30-day temporary registration. And so I would just get these cars for like free or $100. Like I had a mail Jeep, I had just a ton of different vehicles that I would just drive them for 30 days because I knew they wouldn't pass the emissions or safety inspection. So I would just drive them for 30 days and then just resell them.
Swap them out.
Yeah. So I had a lot of cars, so I think that's why they've become such a big part of my life. I just have always been around cool cars, and my dad was into cars, and we used to work on them together. So next question, what are you driving now?
Oh,
What are you not driving now?
Yeah, I got a bunch of junk. Still got the Tercel, so I got that
Sweet.
rolling. I got kind of my more daily driver Scout. It's got a engine swapping it. I got
5
the Terrible.
Kind of cool.
Yeah. The Terrible. Just taking on a bunch of road trips this summer, hopefully. Which is a Scout Terra, for those who don't know. And then I have a 94 Nissan Sentra SER.
Dude, you do have a lot of stuff.
I do, yeah.
That's a cool car. The
Sentra
94
is
Sentra SER is rad.
Car and Driver's top 10 car of the year. Every year it was made.
That's amazing.
Pretty unique, yeah.
And it's got like what,
160,000 miles maybe?
No, but 160 horsepower.
Oh, 140 horsepower.
140 horsepower, but it's at like 7,200 RPMs. Like, it's so fun to drive that car.
It tacks out. And I got the interior all stripped out, so it's pretty.
And you've taken it rally cross,
did an
racing,
autocross and then a rally cross.
Yeah.
The rally cross the course was pretty rutted, and I messed up some suspension stuff.
Yeah,
so it's been sitting
loose
there.
on this car.
Yeah, super rusty. And then I have a 1974 BMW 2002 that I'm currently doing an M20 swap on it.
Sick. That's cool.
That one I'm getting excited for. Should have
How's
that.
it going? M20's in. And what is an M20? Just for
M20. So it originally came with an M10, which is a 4-cylinder BMW motor, and so the M20 is just kind of the next generation. It's a 6-cylinder, so it should go from like 80 or 90 horsepower to 160.
That's gonna be awesome.
165, depending on how clapped the engine is. But
that's cool, man.
Yeah,
that's
so it'll
gonna
be fun.
We'll keep
need some motivation on that one.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
How about yourself? What are you rolling in?
What am I driving now? Kind of a lot of things. Same with you. I have the 91 Suburban. That's kind of our family trip vehicle. It's really, really amazing. I bought it out of California from the original owners. It has original paint.
Oh, really? That was an original owner.
Yeah, this old couple. And that's just great. I love that thing. It's got like, what was fun about that one for me was I had a Suburban before that I just kind of not impulse bought, but like I like these square body Suburbans, and I wanted a later model one, and I did, but it wasn't right. Like we drove it to, we took it on a shop trip to North or South Carolina, and like it just had
crazy heating issues,
tons
and all
of problems.
Sorts of
like we just did. Like we were on the side of the road fixing it more than driving it.
Did we swap the radiator in like an O'Reilly's?
We did a full. We were getting like 3 miles to the gallon, so we did a tune-up at a 454. It just wasn't right. So what I had the opportunity to do was sit down and make this wish list of, because it's cool to own a particular vehicle and go, I like this vehicle, but I don't like this or this or this or this. So I wanted, first and foremost, a 91, because that was the last year of the body style, first year of a 4-speed overdrive transmission, so 4L80 or 4L60. So I know I wanted that, and I know I wanted barn doors and rear AC, because it's a pain to add rear AC. So I wanted that, and then I wanted blue, and I love this kind of blue interior. I wanted that. So I had this like punch list of eight like non-negotiable things that I would just had to find. It had to be a 2500 because I was going to use it for towing. And I was sitting in bed at like 8:30 p.m. Maybe not. I think I was tired or something. Yeah. But I was just scanning Craigslist, sitting by my wife, and I'm like, Heather, this is it. I found it. And it had like everything, all 8 things, like perfect. And in their correct hierarchy.
Yeah, there's like only 3 of those in the country.
Yes. And so I literally called the guy. So he was in California. Called him. I'm like, hey, can I buy? I just PayPal'd him the money right there. It was like 9 o'clock Sunday night. And I'm like, oh, man, I just bought this truck. I have no idea if it's good. And it was as good. So then we got it. I 6-liter swapped it, put in like an 05 6-liter with a rebuilt 4L80, and it's killer. So I'm driving that. Long trips. I have, of course, my heritage Scouts. Like I have a couple Scouts. I've sold every cool Scout I've ever had. So I have 2 that I kind of won't sell. I have a 1967 original patina, just Scout 800. That's really, really fun, and I love that thing.
Super sweet. No top, no doors.
Yeah, I have doors, but yeah, I don't have.
But basic truck is summer cruising,
and like just no rust. Like it's just a really, really cool original paint truck. And I've had like 4 different engines in it and different configurations. So I love that truck. My son already has dibs. He's like, Dad, I'm getting this one. when you pass on the glory, which I'm happy about. I have my 78 Scout. That was my dad's. It was a Scout Traveler, so that was my dad's, and so he left that to me, and so super stoked on that, and I'll always keep that. And I think we're gonna build it next year, do something really fun with it, kind of as an overlanding rig. I have an 89 Ford Probe GT White 5-speed turbo. That's probably my car I'm most excited about. 'Cause
Most recent
acquisition.
That's here anyways.
That is here. So that's really, really cool car. I love those 80s turbo cars, like tons of turbo lag, torque steer. Like they're just...
That's the next big thing, right?
I think it's the next big thing. So
Wow.
Haggerty and other people listening out there, the 80s turbo cars are where it's at.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll be amazed because they were so disposable. Like that Ford Probe GT, everyone that's listening, if you care, go and try to find one.
A nice one.
A nice one. They're like impossible to find. Like so hard to find. Let alone one with mine had, I think, 112,000 miles. Like, funny story if you don't mind. So, found it on Craigslist up in I shouldn't tell my secrets, but Northern California is like a sweet spot for finding cars, in my opinion. Everyone goes to the go-tos of Phoenix, different places in Arizona, which are touch and go because some Arizona places get snow, and they're not great. Remember that Scout we got from it was actually in New Mexico. That thing was roached out, man. It's like the dirt is acidic or something there. Anyway, yeah.
Something weird.
But so found it, kind of texted back and forth with the guy. And then my mom and my brother live out in Sacramento. And so they went to look at it. And this guy's like, can you FaceTime the guy? So he's telling me, I was on just a voice call, and he's like, can we FaceTime? And I'm like, sure, that's kind of weird, but sure. And he's just wanted to see, he's like, oh, you got some gray hair? I'll sell it to you. He's like, I've had only kids, young people want to buy this car. 'Cause it was ridiculously cheap, way undervalued. But he didn't want to see it go to someone that was going to tear it up. And so he thought an older guy's going to take care of it and give it some proper love. So yeah, bought it. Then I drove out there. I flew out there and drove it home. And it was just epic.
Glorious road trip.
Glorious, man.
Oh, yeah.
The heat didn't work. It only works on defrost, and it was in the winter, so my feet were freezing. But still magical. Great car. Got that. I have similar to you. I have an '89 E30 325i BMW. That's my project. It's been in my garage for my personal project, which I don't get to do very often. Keeping the M20, but doing a bunch of mods to it to kind of get to maximize the M20 platform. Because I thought about I could do an LS swap, but I wanted to keep everything. I have so much swap stuff that I wanted to keep it original. So pretty excited about that. I have a 1990 Ford E150 van. That's also really sweet. Low mileage.
And that you also road trip back from California.
I bought it in Sacramento area, road tripped it back to Iowa.
But that was sort of out of a necessity. It was because you were moving stuff back, so it was either rent a U-Haul or just get the biggest vehicle you could possibly find.
Yes, I thought man, just love U-Haul, love working with those guys and using them. But I was like, man, I can just buy a van, drive it one way, and then I'll sell it when I get to Iowa, and it'll be a win-win. It was a great plan. That was
not without its troubles.
Yeah, one of my favorite road trips. Very, very difficult road trip because I did it in February, and over Highway 80 in the winter is not a smart move. So it took me 60 hours to get home.
A rear-wheel drive van.
A rear-wheel drive van with a ton of stuff in it. Yeah. That was miserable, but they're rad, comfortable vehicles. So it's two-wheel drive, just drives super nice, has a posi rear end. But I made it 50 miles from home, and then it blew a head gasket. So that kind of stunk. So just getting that finished. Thank you, Joe. I think that's it. I have a lot of other stuff, but
MX-6?
Oh, don't forget that. I also have a 1989 Mazda MX-6 Turbo. So it's a GT. But that thing's roached. It's kind of like
Roached.
Luke's Sentra. Like we kind of bought. Luke actually inspired me. I saw his Sentra. I'm like, dude, I need like a something that we can go auto crossing, rally crossing. So I do have that. So this summer, we have to go do some rally crossing and auto crossing, and we'll report back.
That inspired the probe. You love the car,
that's right.
but it's roached.
Yeah, what's hard is like in the Midwest when you have a cool car and you want to start fixing it because it's so hard. Like you have to fix it because it's like when it needs brakes and needs all this stuff, but you hate putting money into it when you know it's like super rusty and it's
you're always
not.
busting bolts trying to get stuff
Yeah,
apart.
it's like annoying. See, that's what inspired the Probe. I'm like, I want a nice one that I can actually. I feel good about putting new struts on it or upgrading the turbo or whatever. Okay, so. That is our first segment. What are you driving?
First segment out of how many?
3.
We're running out of time.
So anyway, we're going to organize the show kind of around segments, and we're going to talk about what are you driving? What was your first car? We're going to talk about adventure as a general thing, why it's important to us. We'll talk about a lot of epic adventures we've had. We are going to talk about community and celebrating people. Because again, the stuff, my wife says this all the time, like the stuff's all gonna burn. Like you can't take it with you when you die. So it's not about the stuff. Like what we don't promote just fruitless materialism, but we believe that classic 4x4s carry legacy, and it creates a context of community and of meaningful things. And so to us, we celebrate people. We love stuff, it's fascinating to learn it, but that stuff is really just in context.
Those items, give you context, give you something to gather around.
Yep, that's right. We are going to talk about kind of connection with people, connection with legacy, talk about our dads, how we grew up, just certain things. I want to talk about families, like I'm really fascinated in experiences such as camping, overlanding, working on vintage vehicles as a healthy thing for families, as a means to connect. Mm-hmm. It's a context to connect in and over, and kind of takes people back, allows people to go like, hey, let's get off our smartphones, let's go take a drive in the old Scout or the old Jeep Wagoneer, Range Rover, or whatever.
That's for sure one of my most enjoyable parts of going up into Colorado where nobody's cell phones work. So
that's right.
You just have to be in it.
Connected to the vehicle. And then we love the way that classic 4x4s connect you to the outside world just simply by the range of visibility, the way they design the windows. Like think about the Range Rover Classic. It's got like these super tall, abnormally tall side glass windows, which I believe was meant to connect you to the outside world.
And that's one of my... You said this at some point. Somebody's asking, how come you guys don't put tint your vehicles and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And your response was beautiful. It was because we're trying to connect to the outside instead of insulate from it.
That's right. In new cars, and some of it's due to safety and design, but like they insulate you. So you see the back of the rear of the vehicle, what's back there, you see through a camera, not through looking. Mm-hmm. And that's just...
Well, it's just to get you... Modern vehicles are just to get you from A to B. It's just... If they could make that in between nothing, they would,
That's right.
It's not the journey so much anymore.
So we're going to talk about classic 4x4s. We just love them. And so we're going to talk about all different types of classic 4x4s. They're just super fun. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to explore what it means to be a man, something we didn't really touch into. But, as many of our listeners will know, like Gillette came out with a commercial that was really controversial about just like this idea of toxic masculinity. And so we want to talk about what does it mean to be a man in the 21st century. And so that'll be a fun thing to talk about. We're going to talk about our culture. We'll stay out of like politics and stuff like that because there's enough of that going around. Too much. Yeah. So, but culture is fascinating, and like the future of driving is tied into culture. And so we'll talk about that and explore that. And we wanted to talk about places. Love exploring our country, and like our country is so diverse, from people to cities to rural to like there's so much diversity. And so we love to explore that. So we're going to talk about that. Like we've joked about Like we just want to have a segment that's like cool places to eat.
Just food. Oh, man.
Yeah, going into certain cities and certain regions of the country and just exploring the local fare.
And everybody's got their little spot that they know about.
Yeah, like we were just in Boston and New Hampshire and Portland, Maine. I love the Northeast. And man, me and my kids, we had it out a couple times because like I just think like you go to these divey food places, and I think like the dives are going to be the best, you know. But it's not always true. My son was just like, Dad, stop picking the dives. Like they're just not good.
Sometimes they're just dives.
Yeah. Oh man. So anyway, that was funny.
But you got to try it. You got to learn.
Yep, that's right. So we'll talk about next time. We'll talk about just as a general thing. What are you working on? What's in the garage? Summer goals. I forgot about one vehicle.
You did?
New acquisition. Super stoked.
Yeah.
The '86 Isuzu Trooper 2.
Get to the Trooper.
That's right. It's a 2-door. Super excited. We'll post up some pictures of our car projects.
Again, a California acquisition.
Southern California acquisition.
Ooh.
No rust. I think the original owner, unfortunately, he passed away, so his wife was selling it. And cool story. We'll get to it later. I'll talk about it some other time. We'll talk about some social media stuff that people we like to follow. You got any social media accounts that you enjoy following?
Yeah, New Legend 4x4.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Pretty good.
How about not one of ours?
Oh, I don't know. It's too early to.
Okay, too early to tell.
I'll dig into that a little more.
And some of the people actually that we'll have as guests have fascinating and like really fun Instagram feeds because they're just people that do cool stuff and it's fun to inspire.
I think a lot of times those are the most unique. Yeah, people not necessarily a business but kind of personal pages where they're just traveling. You get to see their lives.
Super fun. So a bit of calendars we wrap up. We are going to be going to Moab. Well, first up on our calendar is we're going to be at the Overland Expo West. Great show. If you've not been, I recommend you going. It's a well-done event and like 12,000 people.
Lots of cool stuff. Tons of vehicles.
Like
tons of gear.
I personally like it better than SEMA, personally.
Yeah, I'd probably agree.
Because it's just in context.
It's for us, yeah.
For us.
It's the stuff we enjoy. It's a curated
like
SEMA.
Barrett-Jackson's super fun. I love going to Barrett-Jackson, particularly with a guest that we'll have, our friend Stu. He and Keith, those guys are just a blast to go to that event with. But anyway, summer, so we're going to Overland Expo in May, and then we're going to go to Moab. I know like Easter Jeep Safari's happening soon. We're not going to be at that. We're going to be doing our own thing in Moab with the Terribles, and this is like a New Legend owners group meetup. So super excited about that. This summer.
And at Expo West, we'll have a couple of New Legend trucks as well as our personal Terribles rigs that we throw out there.
We're kind of going public with the Terribles this year.
Make sure to stop by and say hi.
So I think we'll have an episode on the Terribles and have some of the guys guest in.
Oh, yeah.
What else? We have Outdoor Retailer, big show in Colorado. That's going to be fun. We will be at SEMA this fall. That's going to be exciting. And we're unveiling a new model lineup in the Legends series. Like we're introducing a new lineup, so we're super excited about that.
It's gonna be good.
That's gonna be rad. And a new platform, so we'll talk about that as well. And then this summer, I think nothing super official. We've talked about hitting the Trans Wisconsin again. I know we've also talked about the South Dakota Adventure Loop, so we want to do some more overlanding because we love it so much. And I want to do that. There's like some 80s kind of car show. It's like all around I can't remember the name of it.
Where?
They have a couple of them around the country, but it's like for 80s cars.
Okay.
It's like 1980 through like 1995 or something like that. I can't remember the name of it. But anyway.
We'll look that up.
We'll look it up. And I think that's about it. So super excited to be on this journey. Luke, glad to be working with you and excited to just continue to talk about good things, some meaningless things, and then we'll be coming back at you weekly. So thanks for listening to the New Legend Podcast. I'm Sean.
And I'm Luke.
And we'll talk to you next time.